Good night. Good night to the city. Good night to the good people of Barbados. I know many of you have come from across Barbados to hear this meeting tonight. Now, I want to start on a note that I suppose many of you would be familiar with from this last week of the estimates that you would have heard. And I start on a note where I'm not going to be able to say too much about the Committee of Privileges. And many of you know why. But I believe many of you would know that the current administration would have referred a matter to the Committee of Privileges about the meeting that we are holding here tonight. What concerns me is that I believe each and every one of you know that there are matters in this country which the Democratic Labour Party should be concerned about, but which the Democratic Labour Party chooses not to be concerned about. So they refer a matter to the Committee of Privileges because the title of tonight's meeting is about the Barbados Labour Party telling the people of this country the truth. They are concerned about tonight's meeting and have chosen to refer it to the Committee of Privileges because we have said that this meeting is about hearing who has misled this country in the estimates and in the House of Assembly. And I want to say to the people of this country tonight that to mislead does not mean that you lied. Mislead means to give somebody the wrong impression about something which is happening. And that is what I want to talk to you about tonight. Because I believe that the Democratic Labour Party has been misleading this country on a number of issues. They've been misleading this country on a lot of issues which they know better about. They've been misleading this country and have chosen to speak on matters and to be concerned about matters that do not affect the day-to-day lives of any one of you in this audience. When you can have in a Parliament of Barbados a speaker who is brought before a Committee of Privileges and to whom not any single member of the government side has anything to say about the matter, something is wrong. Now, I say that because in any other Commonwealth jurisdiction, regardless of whether someone is guilty or not of a charge and the person holds the highest office in the Parliament, there is either a resignation or removal of that person for a particular period of time. What did our Prime Minister say in the recent scenario in this country? All right. Get a lawyer. Now, if that is not testimony to the way in which this administration is handling the affairs of this country, I don't know what is. Because I believe that if the head is wrong, the rest of the body ain't gonna work. And if it is that we cannot set precedents at the very highest office, then we cannot expect our little children in this society to do any better or expect them to do any better. Because the examples have to be set in the House of Parliament as well. And it is unfortunate that they would be concerned about this meeting, but they are not concerned about ministers of government whose vehicles are licensed to contractors in the two ministries of this administration that are registered at licensing authorities to persons to whom they give contracts to. That does not concern them. And what worries me is that they would be concerned about this meeting tonight and us talking the truth to the people of this country, but silent on the issue of CLICO and the $3.3 million check which was written by a member of the Democratic Labour Party Parliament. But they want to take on the Barbados Labour Party. They want to stop us from talking. They want to muzzle the people of this country. But I want to tell the people something tonight. I know for sure I ain't stopping talking. The people of St. Michael Southeast sent me to do a job. The people of this country have supported me in doing that job. And the Democratic Labour Party will not stop me from talking. Because when we talk about speaking truth, it is about speaking truth to power. And it is about power regardless of whether that is power of the Democratic Labour Party, the Barbados Labour Party, in a household, in a business. It is about the fact that after so many years of free education, you cannot expect to muzzle a people into submission, believing that because you are the government, that we must do only what you say we are to do. Or that we must believe only what you say we are to believe. And I say to you tonight, good people of the city, and all the people who are gathered here, that the Barbados Labour Party will not be muzzled. Because I have seen, even in the course of this last week of estimates, that it is important to speak the truth to power. Because I have had to deal with, over the past couple of, well, from the time I have taken up the position of leader of opposition business, had to deal with the frustration of finding out the night before, on most occasions, what we are debating in Parliament the next day. Now, I want the people of this country to understand, we do the best damn job that we can in the circumstances. But because it may have happened under an administration 20 years ago, or because it happened under an administration 10 years ago, it is not right in 2016. The people of this country deserve better. And because we have done things the same way in the estimates for the last couple of years, does not mean we must continue to do the same thing. Because many of you hear us talk about, we haven't gotten to the heads. We haven't been able to examine the various ministries. But many of you do not realize that a lot of times we don't get to the heads because the same Democratic Labour Party administration doesn't want us to get to the heads. Because getting to the heads, which is the individual ministries that members of Parliament or ministers represent, means that we are going to examine critically where they are spending the money, what they haven't spent the money on, who they give the money to, who didn't get the money they should have gotten, and where all the corruption is possibly taking place in any particular government ministry. So when they say, oh, we are going to do 3 heads in this estimates, and we end up doing 2. And the one ministry that we don't get to, by the end of 5 days in the Parliament, is one of the ministries that perhaps is most crucial to all of the Barbadians across this country, the Ministry of Agriculture. Because it touches on the issue of water. Not just the fact that the water cut off and you can't get the water, but the fact that you can't pay your bills. That no matter how much money you're taking home in your pocket daily, it is not enough to pay the day-to-day expenses that people across this country are facing. That is what we would have been talking about in the estimates. So when they tell you it was the Labour Party that didn't give them the opportunity, or we didn't want to be able to debate it, it is not so. And those are the things that for me, you know, they say I am the youngest member of Parliament, but I ain't so young no more. You understand? I'm getting on in age. But from where I sit and from where I have come, it is frustrating to me to know that we, after educating me, after educating all of you, and knowing that we as a people can do better, this administration tells us that better cannot be done. Well, I don't know about you, but I am not prepared to fall into that malay, that belief that Barbados cannot do better. I believe in the philosophy of the Barbados Labour Party that we stand for a better life for all Barbadians. We stand for a better life for Barbadians regardless of whether they are Democratic Labour Party supporters and whether they are Barbados Labour Party supporters and whether they don't support any political class. We support a better life for people of this country. And we have never been ones to punch below our weight. This is a country that has always punched above its weight. You know, sometimes I think that the Barbados Labour Party messages be too high. That sometimes we have such a great vision for this country, that we've put things in place over the decades to be able to set up infrastructure for future generations. And then what are you left with? A Democratic Labour Party administration that completely dismantling the international business sector. Don't understand why the Barbados Labour Party attempted to diversify the Barbadian economy. wants the people of this country to believe that we relied only on tourism and we did nothing else, without telling the people the truth that it was the Barbados Labour Party that understood that we had to diversify the Barbadian economy, and that we set about on a course to ensure that not only did we develop the telecommunications sector and liberalize the telecommunications sector, but also that we went so far as to develop the new economic sectors, which would have been the cultural industries and the sporting industries. But yet they would have us believe that having come to office, the climate internationally was so difficult that they found themselves in a position where, well, they had the money, things difficult overseas, so basically things got to be difficult here. They did not realize that so many mechanisms had been left in place by the Barbados Labour Party for them to build on. That is what upsets me, because we left it in place and they have destroyed what the Barbados Labour Party left. Now I understand that sometimes you don't want to build on something because the Barbados Labour Party is going to get credit for it. I understand that. But good God, when you recognize good ideas, I say to the Democratic Labour Party people tonight, oh God, give credit where credit is due. The international business sector was the sector that was poised to be able to take Barbados forward. If the tourists don't come, at least you have businesses that don't necessarily have to be on Barbadian shores, but basically can generate revenue. Okay, a lot of people don't understand it, but it was a vision that the Barbados Labour Party had to develop our services sector. This year, we have had a decline of almost half of the revenue from the international business sector. Half of the revenue. It was at 5 million last year. It is now at 2.5 million. Do you understand what is happening? That is not anything the Barbados Labour Party did. We left it there as a booming industry. They are the people who presided over 500 million US dollars in lost revenue to this country between 2008 and 2013. That 500 million US dollars, people, could have paid for a number of the social services that they have now cut. It could pay for things in the hospital. It could ensure that the transport board buses come to your houses on time and get your children to school. It would have ensured that your salaries were not cut. It would have prevented the layoffs that we have seen across this country. But yet, what they want us to believe is that not only that we have to change the way in which we do things, and yes, we do. We have to change the way in which we do things, because we can't keep doing things the same way and expecting a different result. But at the same time, what I cannot deal with is the lies, the belief that the Barbados Labour Party left nothing in place. But you know, history is a wonderful thing. And social media is an even more powerful thing. Because we can look back on the fact today of social media videos to see clippings of the Prime Minister promising that he would send home, that the Barbados Labour Party was going to send home over 10,000 people. We can look back at those clippings today. We can look back at those clippings and challenge this administration over the things that they said the Barbados Labour Party was going to do. They said that we were going to make the pensioners pay for the buses. But yet in Parliament a few days ago, I'm hearing reports that of the real cost of the transport board buses being at $6. People are asking me if it is that they now plan to charge you $6 for a bus fare. That is the reality. Because instead of recognizing when we were having discussions about the issue of transport, that you needed to level with the people about the cost of certain services, the Democratic Labour Party chose to lie to this country about the reality of what was happening in the transportation sector. But now they speak of this $6 as though they are now going to impose it after making it free to school children to be able to travel on the buses. And while I appreciate the policy of allowing school children to travel free, what I will not stand here and say to this country is that at the same time, you cannot implement a policy where you are going to lose revenue and not expect that you're going to have to find revenue from somewhere else. Every single person in this audience in this country understands that if you are not making money, you shouldn't be spending money you don't have. So if it is that this government is not making the money, at the end of the day, why are we trying to spend more than we have? Why are we biting off more than we can chew? And these are the things that I believe when I interact with Barbadians across this country, that is, these sentiments are echoed time and time again. People want to know how Barbados is going to get out of this mess. But instead, we are subjected day after day, every time we meet in Parliament, to the Democratic Labour Party believing as though they have not been the government of this country for the last 7 years. We are subjected to a discourse on what the Barbados Labour Party did and what the Barbados Labour Party did not do. But what they fail to tell us is what they have done and what they are going to do. And I say to the people of this country, the truth has to be told, not only about our financial circumstances, but our history has to be recorded in such a way that both parties are able to let the people know what they have done in this country. And no greater a shame could be cast on this country by the Democratic Labour Party than what is happening with these independence celebrations this year. Every single place that I have gone in this last week, the one question that every single person is asking, how can we spend $7 million on independence celebrations for the 50th anniversary? Not a single person is not asking me that. People are concerned because you know what Bajans understand? It's not that we're not patriotic, but Bajans take a position that, but how can this government afford $7 million? But they said their home people, they can't pay for things at the hospital. This is what the people of this country are asking. And if that was not enough, last night before we left Parliament, they voted another $775,000 for the independence celebrations. So if it wasn't enough, if they didn't tell you like it or lump it a couple nights ago, they have now told you like it or lump it. Because we are close to 8 million. And you know what is a dangerous precedent that the Minister of Finance has set? He has said to this country and also the Prime Minister that they're unapologetic about spending money for the independence celebrations. And I assure the people of this country, I can bet you that when next year comes, that we are, before the end of next year, we're going to hear about another supplemental for the independence celebrations. And there will no doubt be a cost overrun. So it isn't going to be close to 8 million. It may in fact end up being 10 million when you are done. And I say to the people of this country, I don't know if you have had enough, but I honestly have had enough of this administration. And I say that not in the spirit of just being a Barbados Labour Party member. I say that because I'm tired of the excuses. I would say something else that I'm tired of, but I can't say on this platform. The police officers are there. But I'm tired. I'm tired because I know that this country can do better. I know that all of the business people in this surrounding area are hurting. Even the people who the prostitutes hurting because the people are spending the money for the services. That is the reality. That is what we have come to. Because people making choices, whether they spend there, whether they spend on their children's food supplies, whether they send their children to school, they are making decisions in their life in a way that they have never had to do in this country before. That is what is happening. And when business in this country, you can hear people crying out. They're crying out about the tax, the mobile tax that they imposed. First of all, they came with the tax and they said, this tax is going to be an excise tax. And then, of course, they got that wrong. So that tax was supposed to bring in 32 million, of which they said that they were going to put some of the money towards education. They didn't say how much. And I listened to the Minister of Finance carefully. And if you all get the opportunity, go through the budget of 2015. He did not say how much of that money from the mobile tax would go towards the education grants. So it means that you are led to believe that this tax is a necessary tax because it is going to help with education, but you don't even know how much is being allocated to the education fund. And then what they do is they realize that that was bad law, so they come back now and they tell the people of this country they're going to introduce a VAT of 22% on the cell phones, which is going to be collected by the telecommunications companies. But that particular revenue measure is not going to bring in $32 million to this country. That revenue measure is only going to bring in 13 million to this country. So yet again, they're saying to you, we're getting money, we're imposing an additional burden on you, we're projecting that we're going to bring down your debt, but then they get it wrong again, just like they got the municipal solid waste tax and got that wrong and they had to revoke that as well. And then they've gotten wrong the fingerprinting as well. You see the mess that we're in? Because error after error is being made by this administration. It can't be the public servants. It got to be the head directing the rest of the body. I don't believe it's the good public servants of this country, because I feel that they give the ministers the correct advice and then they do as they like. But you cannot impose on businesses high water rates, high electricity rates, inability to access financing. Most people in this country want to start up in some way, some kind of small business. But what is the reality? You must have money to be able to set up a business. So explain to me, after 7 years of a Democratic Labour Party administration and government, what money you have? You don't have none. You don't have the leeway to be able to go forward, to say you have security, to be able to carry to a banking institution, to get any of the resources that are down at central bank. That is the reality of what is happening in this country. People don't want to take risks, even on entrepreneurs. Businesses all across, all through the city are hurting. Businesses in St. Michael's Southeast, all across this country are hurting. Because people in St. Thomas, Santia, people are hurting because they do not have the disposable income to be able to plan better. I journeyed all the way down to Pelican Village today because I read the reports in the paper today about the issues down there. That the BIDC planned an exercise down there to be able to attract tourists, to be able to have the craftsmen of this country be able to show their trade and to be able to sell their stuff. And would you believe that person after person, tenant after tenant, said the same thing? The Barbados Industrial Development Corporation is not meeting minds with the people who are actually the owners and the renters of the various businesses, small businesses in this country. They're not appreciating the fact that the building needs to be maintained. They haven't maintained it. You have boards that have been licked out. You have places that needed painting. You have issues where people cannot afford the rent. And they made a big stink about the fact that people can't afford the rent down in BIDC. But how are you going to afford the rent if it is that this administration for 7 years has been making you bear a burden that has now become unbearable to most people across this country? Whether it is whether it is in town, whether it is the vendors that the police officers no doubt have been told, get them off of the street at Christmas. I beg you, leave the vendors in town. Let the vendors play the trade. Because at the end of the day, you are hurting families. There has to be a better way to regulate the system of vending in this country. It cannot be that people have found that they now have to go onto the streets to play their trade even more than before because people are not coming into the stores. And then what do? You end up basically now running people off of the street. It is not fair to the people of this country. Better can be done. And as I close, because Santia is giving me the red light, I want to say to this country, and I want to say to the people of Barbados, we will continue in the Barbados Labour Party to speak truth to power. And we want you to be able to speak truth to power. When you recall that when we marched against the municipal solid waste tax, action was taken. It was repealed, right? Led by Mia Amor Motley, leader of the Barbados Labour Party, we marched hand in hand and spoke truth to power for what we felt was a bad tax. I take the view that the people of this country must continue to have a voice. Whether they have a voice in their numbers by marching, whether they have a voice by empowering the people of the Barbados Labour Party to lead this country, whether they have a voice because they send us emails because they express their position on social media or in the newspaper. People of this country must continue to have a voice and speak truth to power. And if nothing else you leave this meeting tonight, I ask you to continue to remember that. They will say that they're going to crack our heads and they're going to shoot us, and they don't find nothing wrong with that. But I say to you, it's not about being violent, but you must be able to represent yourself and to say that something is going wrong in your country. I wish you a blessed night.